Hi, I'm Claudia Coenen, and I am a thanatologist. Thanatology is the study of death, dying, and bereavement, and as such, I'm a grief specialist. I'm also an author at Jessica Kingsley Books, and I've written 2 books, Shattered by Grief, Picking Up the Pieces to Become Whole Again, and The Creative Toolkit for Working with Grief and Bereavement, which is a practitioner's guide. Today I'm going to be sharing with you several techniques that you can use with your grief in a creative way when you have limited resources. So you don't really need to have a lot of material. You can just find things around your house to do these activities that I'm going to give you. And I'm going to be sharing 3 things that we can do. But first I want to tell you why I think creativity is important. For myself, I've been a person who's been involved in creativity since I was a little child. I started dancing at the age of 4, and I started also playing piano when I was 4. By the time I was 9, I was playing guitar with my mother and singing on the stage. I continued to dance and to choreograph, and for me, the feelings inside my body and the things that I needed to express needed a way to get out. I needed to find a way to get those feelings out in a clear way, and using creative expression was the way that I did that. So I would dance out my feelings, or I would sing out my feelings, or I would listen to music that really moved me, and that would help me express my feelings. I also have always loved reading and writing, and literature has been a way for me to enter all kinds of new worlds. So the power of writing and the power of literature has always been a part of my life. So I believe very strongly in writing through difficult times in your life. And to that end, I created the Karuna cards, which are a set of prompts that help you through grief and difficult life transitions. And many of them are journal prompts. So the first thing that I'm going to share with you is how to journal. Perhaps you already do, but I would like to encourage you to take a very creative approach to your journal. A journal doesn't have to be a diary where you sit and write, "Dear diary, this morning I had oats for breakfast." If that's what you want to write, that's fine, but you also could use your journal in a more creative way. For instance, I often journal in just a regular sketchbook, and I might, in this sketchbook, I might take a whole page and write on it, but I also might use color and just draw out how I'm feeling. I might sometimes design things. You can write in color. You don't have to write in black and white. There's lots of different ways to use a journal. Here is a kind of mandala that I made one day when I was trying to express how I was feeling. And here I used colored pastels. These are soft oil pastels that you can rub and blend the colors in if you want. But you don't have to worry if you don't have these in your house for the activities that we're going to do today. So the first one I'm going to talk about is writing. So if you have a book that you like to write in, or maybe you have a pretty journal that you like. Some people like to write in moleskin journals. This is just a book with blank pages. Whatever you can find, and if you can't find anything, then just find a blank piece of paper. So what we're going to do is use a prompt, and I'm going to use one of the Karuna cards. Here they are. And here's the prompt. Complete the following sentences in your journal. I am, I hope, I wish, I will always remember, I will. So what my suggestion to you is that you write down each of these statements on the paper in different places, and then you spend some time reflecting on what that means to you, and then just write out a short sentence or maybe a short paragraph about how you feel. So now I'm going to share with you my response to the Karuna card, and I decided to write my response in a different color. I wrote it in green, and I took each statement, and I didn't think too much. It's really good with these kind of writing exercises not to intellectualize it too much, but just to sort of write stream of consciousness and see what arises. So I wrote, I am open and kind. I am trying, and sometimes I try too hard. I hope the pandemic ends soon, and I hope to continue to learn and grow. I wish I could travel. I wish to connect with more people and to share our stories. I will always remember Albie and all he meant to me and all he still is. I will always remember our love. I will be optimistic about the future. I will listen with my full attention. and I will try to learn what I don't know yet. So that's my response. I'd be interested to hear what your response was to this prompt. Writing through grief is a very effective way of working with your story. We all have a compulsion to tell our story, especially after somebody dies. We often find ourselves telling the story over and over again of what happened. And there's even an adage that says you have to tell your story 72 times in order to heal. Well, I felt like I had to tell my story 72 times only to believe it. So I found myself telling the story of the death of my husband over and over again. And after a while, I began to notice that the story had the same words, the same shape. I was telling it in exactly the same way. In fact, it had lost its emotional power. So I thought perhaps I should start telling a different story. So I began to tell the story of the relationship. I began to tell the story of his life and how my life had been affected by him and how our relationship had shifted both of us and how we had both grown by being in relationship to each other. So there are many different ways that we can tell our story. And there are many different ways of writing through your grief. You can simply write, exactly how you feel and just write that word over and over again, angry, 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 or whatever it is that's coming up. You can write it in color. And you can also make it a fairy tale if you like. You can imagine what it would be like if that person was still here, or if you could talk to them. You could write a letter to them to tell them something that you want to say. There are so many different ways that you can write through your grief. It is also true that when you start to write about deep emotions, sometimes you feel very upset. Expressive writing initially raises up those emotions, and it can be unsettling when that happens. So just be aware that that might happen. But it has also been proven that people who write through difficult times in their lives have a much better outcome later on than people who don't do it. So I still would encourage you to write through your grief, even if it does make you upset initially. Because after all, you're grieving. It's really okay to cry and to be upset about the fact that this person isn't there anymore. Grief is a very emotional time, and this is probably the most obvious sign of grief. People feel all different emotions, and you can feel 3 different emotions at the same time, so it's very challenging to learn how to cope with it. It's very challenging to manage these emotions. And so let's talk about what they are. People obviously feel sad, so sorrow is a big one, and that makes us feel like crying. It makes us feel like crawling under the covers and not wanting to get out. It makes us feel very isolated. There's also fear and insecurity, because now that something really big has happened and changed your life, there's a fear that maybe something else will happen. Some other bad thing will come along, or the other shoe is going to drop. So there's fear, uncertainty, because you don't know what the future might be, and sadness. And many people also feel angry when they're grieving. They feel that it's unfair that this person has died, or they feel that what's happened to their life is unfair. There's a sense of injustice, and there's a sense of, what if I had been able to do something? If only I had been able to change it. What if this had happened, or if I had gone to another doctor, or what if all of these thoughts come into play. So that's a feeling of uncertainty. A feeling of insecurity accompanies that. Anxiety is another emotion that we experience when we're grieving, and it can also be really difficult to manage. So how do we get through this? How do we hold all these different emotions when they're crashing over us like a giant tsunami? So there's a way to do it creatively. And one of the first things to do before we even take any action is to just notice what's happening inside of our body. How are we feeling? What is the emotion that's coming up? Or what are the several emotions that are coming up? So noticing what's happening and what's arising is the first thing that you can do. And an easy way to do this is to use the acronym HALT, H-A-L-T, which stands for, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Or am I tired? So the first one is, if you start to feel very unsettled, you might ask yourself, when's the last time I ate? When's the last time I had something to drink? What is it that I need right now? And see if that will help you feel a little bit better. And A, for angry, that's sort of noticing what emotion is. Perhaps it's not anger, perhaps it's fear, or it's sadness. So just noticing and identifying that emotion will help you figure out how to cope with it. And L, am I lonely? Am I feeling isolated? Would it help to call somebody? Or would it help to take a walk where I can at least see other people? So you have an opportunity to make a choice to use that kind of technique. And T, am I tired? Do I need to take a break? Am I feeling really overwhelmed? Is it too much for me right now? So that's an acronym that you can use, HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. and see if that might help you regulate your emotions. Another thing that we can do when we're starting to feel emotional is to just let that flow. Allowing your emotion to express itself and giving it its voice is necessary. And you might have to check out, are you in a good place to do that? Is it safe for you to allow your emotion to come out? Are you in the middle of doing something else? Perhaps you're in the middle of doing something at work, so that's not an appropriate time. So then you need to take some steps to sort of mitigate it and save it up for later. But if it's possible, and if you are in a place where it's okay to let it all go, I highly recommend that. I think that allowing our emotions to flow and have their expression is really helpful, and it's very important to release your emotions. So one way to approach that is first to decide, am I safe? Is this a good time? Am I going to be able to have the space in which to allow my emotions to just come out? And then allow it to happen. But also give yourself a time limit. So if you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to let this go. I can't stop this anymore. I'm going to let it go completely for 10 minutes. And then you just let it out. And that might involve crying and screaming and throwing yourself on the floor or whatever it is that you need to do. And you allow yourself to do that for a period of time. And when you get close to the 10-minute mark, start to take some deep breaths. Start to calm yourself down. Give yourself a hug. Remind yourself that releasing your emotion is a good thing and you've just done a really good job at it. And then when you hit the 10-minute mark, pick yourself up, wipe your face, blow your nose if you need to, and then go and splash some cold water on your face, just calm down, and move on from there. And congratulate yourself that you really did a job well done for allowing that emotion to go out. I'm also going to talk about somatic ways to release your emotions, because the body is the first responder of emotion. So you probably will notice when you start to feel sad or you start to feel angry, there's a physical reaction in your body. And if you tune into what's happening in your body, you begin to understand what emotion is on its way. When I was grieving, I noticed that I began rubbing the top of my head. I began rubbing my forehead. And I would watch myself do this and I'm like, what is this? And it almost always preceded an episode of falling apart. So I began to notice that there was some physical thing that was happening. I started to feel shaky. I started to feel a lump in my throat. I started to rub my forehead. So then I would decide, okay, can I let this go now or should I wait? And if I needed to wait, I would take some remedial action, shake my body around or maybe have a cup of tea or whatever I needed to do to wait until later when I could let it go. But if I had the opportunity, then I would say, okay, here it comes. I'm ready to go. So that's noticing what's happening in your body in a somatic way. And another thing that we can do is we can notice the energy that's in our body, and we can use our creativity to draw that out on a page. And by doing so, it's similar to what we do when we journal. We take that energy that's moving around inside of us, and maybe it's like bubbling up, and we spread it out on a page. So I'm going to give you a demonstration of how to do this, but I want you first to center yourself. And I'm going to demonstrate that too in a physical way. I've cleared a little space here in my office so that I have some room to move. And I'm going to demonstrate a very simple breathing and stretching exercise that will help you get grounded and centered when you're feeling really agitated or over-emotional. Once you've released your emotion, you still might have some residual energy inside. And also, this is a nice way to release emotion when you really don't have time to go into a full-blown crying episode. So I'm going to take my glasses off and put them over here. And this is very simple. I'm going to bend down pretty far, but you don't have to. Just bend as much as you want within the limits of your own body. Don't push it. Just make it very gentle. And you'll notice I just finished by placing my hands on my belly and just 2 more breaths, just feeling my feet on the ground, my whole body stacked on top, my shoulders relaxed, and the breath moving very easily through my body. And this will really help you with calming down your emotion and also getting in touch with it. Because the next thing we're going to do is we're going to close our eyes and feel the emotion inside and just imagine what that looks like and what color it is. And then I'm going to move over to a page with some art materials and I'm going to draw out that feeling. And here again, you don't really need to have anything special. You could have just a plain piece of paper and some crayons if you like, or colored pencils, or markers, whatever you want to use. I'm going to be using crayons because I like them. And as I said before, I really like how you can smush them around, so I find them very pleasing to work with. But just choose something that you like, and even if you're only using a piece of a black pencil, that's okay, whatever you want to do. But the idea is to close your eyes, get in touch with the energy inside your body, and then draw it out on the page. Here's a demonstration. When I approach this kind of energy drawing, I find it's really helpful to just let go of my rational mind and just feel that energy inside of me, and then choose colors and just start working. And I try not to think about it at all if I can. And it's often surprising what comes up. So I started in the center and I made a box and I put myself inside the box, and then I drew an energy spiral inside of it. And I just was thinking about feeling contained and wanting to feel like I knew where I was, where my boundaries were. So that's what the box represents to me. And then I began to express the flow of energy that was emanating away from me. So it came out in all different colors. And I can tell you that I'm actually a person, I'm not particularly fond of yellow. So when I find myself using yellow, it's usually because I feel kind of yucky. But the other colors, the green and the orange, feel very enlivening to me. So they were satisfying. And I just allowed the colors to define the shape, and more spirals appeared. And then when I got to a place where I thought I was done, I began smushing some of the colors together with my fingers. And I felt pretty complete with this. So I'm just going to let you look at it again. A good thing to do when you've put something down on paper or you've expressed yourself through collage or any other means is to make what Natalie Rogers calls a creative connection. Natalie Rogers was an art therapist, an expressive arts therapist, and she was the daughter of the great psychologist Carl Rogers, who invented the concept of person-centered psychotherapy. And she believed in making this creative connection in which you would express yourself in one modality and then respond to it in another. So for instance, if you made a movement, then you might respond to it in drawing. Or if you wrote something out, then you might move with it afterwards. In this case, what I did is after I completed my drawing, I sat with it for a while and I allowed it to speak to me. And I opened up my journal and I wrote a reflection. So this is another thing that you can do when you finish your energy drawing, is you could write a reflection if you like. So this is what I wrote. Boxed in, alone, yet the flow arises, escaping in jagged waves, swirls of color, intense and vibrant, whirling, rushing, and I am still within it, enclosed, holding my own. And another thing you might do is you might look at your drawing and you might feel like moving with it. You could just close your eyes and dance out the feelings. So there's so many possibilities when you decide to draw the feelings inside your body. Another one of my favorite methods to work with grief is to use a collage. Making a collage out of bits of paper is a metaphor for grief. I know I felt as if I had been shattered by my loss, as if little pieces of myself were in broken shards all over the ground. And how to put myself back together to become whole was almost a compulsion. So making a collage is a way of working with that metaphor. So when you take pieces of paper and imagery and you cut them up or you rip them into shreds and then you reassemble them into a new image, something that can speak to how you're feeling or maybe even guide you into what you want to do next, collage is a really wonderful method for this. And you don't really need to have a lot, although what's nice is if you're interested in collage, you can start a collection over time. And I have in my office, I have folders that I keep. This one is a folder of animals, so there are things like this. These are all cut out of magazines. Here's a bug. This side has a storm, which might be interesting if I was feeling stormy, and on the other side are some other baby animals. So I keep my folders in categories, and some people keep folders in colors. Some people organize things in colors. Like I know a collage artist who has everything that's red and everything that's blue in a file cabinet. So I have a folder for animals. I have a folder for faces and people. This is a folder for words, and words are really useful when you're making a collage because, like this one says, relax, because they can help you. This one, there's a word here, discover. So I just, whenever I see words that I think are interesting, I could just rip them out or cut them up and I slip them in a folder. And I might take a picture of fruit from a magazine or an art image that just has colors that I like. Here's a tree on one side, and on the other side, it sort of looks kind of abstract, but it's actually, there's little people in here. So I keep a collection of these things, but the fact is that you don't really need to have anything special. I'm going to do a demonstration of a collage where I'm going to use a newspaper and 2 magazines, one of which just arrived in the mail today. So another thing that you could use is a calendar. This is an old calendar that's just been lying around, and this one has animals in it. But you also could cut out just the flowers, or if there's other parts of it, you can use words. Anything's available to you. This is another picture from an art magazine. And also, if you've been doing some drawing or playing with color and shape, you might, once you're finished with that and you've done your reflection, you would be able to cut this up and use that in the collage. So that's available to you as well. So what you need are some images that you think you'd like to work with, and you need a pair of scissors, and you need something to glue it down. So I like to use a glue stick. These are readily available in art supply stores or even in the market or in the pharmacy. What's nice about them is that they're really easy to just put on the back and then just stick down, and usually you can pick it up and move it around a little bit. So I'm going to do a combination of cutting and tearing, and I really like the tearing of pages because the metaphor of ripping feels like grief, and I also really love the jagged edge. So let me tell you about this collage that I just made. First of all, it's quite red. That just happened. I started out with looking through newspapers and through some magazines that I had and some other pictures that I've collected and some words. And I made some selections. I really tried not to think very much about it. I just took whatever appealed to me, whatever looked good, or a word that popped off the page. A couple of places the word relax was there, and change. It says, over here, it says life brings changes, and then I added change, it's constant. And coming to grips is another word that's on here. And this one, there were two. There was a relax in bigger letters, and this is the reflection. And I ended up just using the reflection of the word relax. And I put some butterflies on it. This is an open mouth, which really felt to me like a yell. So the other thing about this collage is that after I made it, I sat and I reflected on it, and I decided that there were some things that I didn't like. For instance, I had the word action here, and that just didn't feel right with the rest of the picture, so I put another word, relax. And then that scream, that feeling of a yell, I decided to make in a crumpled up piece of paper here. So this is red and yellow crepe paper, which I crumpled and smushed in and just glued onto the mouth. These things look like tears to me, so I stuck them on the eye. So that's the collage.
I want to talk to you about some other ways to use collage and how it can really help you express what you're going through. This is a collage that I call Bombs Away, and it comes out of a dream that I had in the middle of the night, and I woke up crying because the dream just felt like a nightmare. In the dream, I was walking down a street, and all of a sudden an explosion happened, and I felt like a bomb had gone off in the middle of the street, and there was a big crater in front of me in my dream. And I woke up crying, feeling very upset, and I felt like what the dream was saying to me was a devastation had happened and a bomb had gone off in the middle of my life, which was the death of my husband. So I took my pad of paper out and some oil pastels, and I drew a picture of a bomb with a fuse and a flame coming out of it. And then I began to make this collage, and I made a woman, and I used crumpled up paper of red and gold and yellow to represent the flames, and they actually jut out from the picture. They're three-dimensional. And I used another piece of paper on which I had drawn stripes just to calm myself. I had spent some time just making these long lines of different colors with pencils. And then I used that and I cut it up and used that for the background. When I was finished with making this collage, which actually felt very distressing to do, I sat back and I observed it. And I was really struck by the face, because the face looks very calm, which was very surprising to me because I felt so upset by the dream and even while I was making the collage. So what it said to me was, I actually was going to be able to survive. When I looked into the eyes, they look like they're open and they're seeing clearly, and the mouth almost looks like it's smiling. And that told me that I would be able to get through this, get through the pain of grief, and come out on the other side and learn how to live fully again. And that was really a revelation for me. Another collage is one that has swirls of purple and red and sort of a magenta color, and on top of it is overlaid a picture of water and a mermaid. And this collage speaks to me of flow, and I think that I made it when I was really feeling very stuck, so I wanted to kind of create that flow for myself. So I just made swirls on the paper, and then I found the water images and put them on top. And the third collage I want to share with you, I call action because that's the only word that's written on it. And here it's just an assembly of some flowers, some blue sky, some water, and some flames. And I made this collage when I was feeling very stuck, and I was feeling like I really didn't know which way to go, but I knew that I wanted to take some kind of action. And so that's what this collage speaks to me. The fact is, when we respond to imagery, color, shape, bits of paper, and we decide to assemble them together into something new, we are activating the creative parts of our brain, but we're also allowing our brains to relax in some way. The act of working with our hands is very relaxing to our nervous system, and that's another reason why creative process is so effective.
Thank you so much for joining me today as we talked about creative exercises to alleviate grief in a time of limited resources. I hope you found these techniques helpful and that you'll be able to use them in different ways again and again. But I'd also like to remind you that being creative doesn't really require a piece of paper or a movement or any particular technique. You can be creative just by making a nice meal. You can be creative by making yourself a lovely cup of tea. You can be creative by choosing to have that cup of tea in a different chair than the one that you usually sit in. Taking a walk in nature and enjoying the beauty that you see, allowing it to inform your senses, breathing with nature. This is a creative act as well, and all of these can really help you when you're grieving. So thank you so much. Sarah has written in to ask, how do we handle funerals and the traditions that we normally might have during the pandemic when we can't gather? So while I agree that this is very challenging, there are definitely ways to do it. First of all, if you would like to have a very traditional service, the way that you might if you were all to be able to go to a church or a synagogue, I would suggest talking to your clergy or even to the funeral directors, because these people have been dealing with this since the beginning of the pandemic, and they may have some ideas on how to help you. Another way that you can do it is to create your own. So you choose a platform such as Zoom or one of the other platforms where people can just sign in and be on video together. And before you set it up, you decide what you'd like to have. What are the elements that you'd like to have? And then you invite people to bring things. Perhaps somebody might want to bring a poem, or somebody might want to sing a song, or perhaps you might like to just play a song that everybody could listen to together. You could invite people to bring a flower or to light a candle at a certain time, and then you can all sit in a moment of remembrance after you've lit the candle. Also, it's a good idea to invite people to share stories, to share a funny story of something that they did with that person, or perhaps a way that they were very strongly influenced by this person, something that they're always going to remember. So anything that is meaningful for you and meaningful for the people who are attending can be invited to share during this virtual ceremony. It's also important to remember that there are people who are not that comfortable online, or perhaps they don't have a computer, or they don't have a good video camera or enough bandwidth to join in this way. But a lot of these kinds of platforms do allow you to phone in. So if they have a telephone, they can join that way. Another possibility is to invite them to write something that somebody else could read during the ceremony. You also could invite people to send in pictures, and you could gather those photographs into a book, a commemorative book, that then could be shared with everybody later on. There's a lot of online platforms where you can actually create a book really inexpensively and then make copies for people. So that's another way that you can create that gathering of remembrance, which is what we really are needing. And this also feeds into the second part of the question, which is, how do we deal with the loss of community? So, ever since the pandemic happened and people started talking about social distancing, I was very puzzled by that, because we do need to be physically distanced, but we don't need to be socially distant. Now, that definitely is going to take a little bit of reaching out, and that's how we deal with that loss of community. We reach out to those people that we care about. We call friends that maybe we haven't seen or we haven't talked to in a long time. We can even write letters. We can send cards. We can have little gatherings, like little cocktail parties with our friends and family. We could have dinner parties with our families on the computer, if you like. And since it's warmer weather now, we actually can gather outdoors if we maintain that physical distance and still share a meal together, have a barbecue, have a cocktail with one another, a glass of wine, take a walk in the park, maintaining the distance and wearing a mask. But it can be done. It does take a little more effort, but I think that also makes it more meaningful. So I hope that answered your question. Thank you.